Hello everyone, welcome to Easy Economics. How are you all doing? Today I brought for you all an exciting series for discuss questions. I've been receiving a lot of requests from you all that you all want to do discuss questions that are 8 markers. In this series, we'll be discussing numerous discuss questions that covers topic throughout the syllabus. Today, the topic is related to employment. So let's dive straight into the question. All right. The question I brought for you all today says, discuss whether a country would benefit from having full employment. It came in November 2015, variant 22. Now, it's an 8 marker. Remember, the key word in this question is discuss. Whenever the question has the keyword of discuss, you need to produce a balanced argument. You need to produce the pros and the cons regarding the statement given in the question with a sound judgment, with a sound evaluation at the end of the answer, justifying your reasoning. For each side, you can be awarded by the examiner up to 5 marks for why you might agree with the statement or why you might not agree with the statement. You need to produce evidence for that. And then you need to end your answer with a conclusion. Now, whenever you've got a discuss question, the key to answering such questions is produce a sort of a brainstorming, list down or jot down the main key points regarding both the sides, and then develop that cause and effect relationship, develop that chain analysis, and then write a well-balanced argument, convincing the examiner and qualifying yourself for that level 3 band of answer. That means we need to target ourselves to get up to that level 3 in which we are able to attain 6 to 8 marks. All right. Slowly, yet surely, inshallah, by the end of this series, I'm sure all of my learners will be able to ace in their discuss questions. All right. Now, give a good thought. First, we'll begin our answer by explaining to what we mean by full employment. Then we'll think about and jot down all the benefits that a country will attain if it is having full employment. Now, come on. What is the situation of full employment? Yes, full employment is when all the resources are being fully utilized in a country, right? When there's efficient utilization of the resources. And what do you think should be the benefits the country would be receiving? It would be on the PPC. And when a country is on the PPC, what does it mean? At the present moment, it is utilizing all its resources. There is efficient utilization of resources. The country is operating at its maximum capacity, right? There would be no wastage, right? It's using all its given resources and technology up to its max. All the people are employed nearly, right? There's minimum level of unemployment. The country is at the productive potential, right? And what will happen? Yes, the people would be better off. There would be higher standard of living, right? And what will happen when people are better off? The poverty level will fall. So what will happen? Will the government be giving more unemployment benefits to people or less? Yes, exactly. There would be less unemployment benefits given by the government. So what does this mean? That the scarce resources of the government would have been spending elsewhere and not on the provision of unemployment benefits. So this means what can the government do? Yes, the government can use those scarce resources for what? For the development of infrastructure, maybe for the provision of health services, or maybe for the provision of education, right? What else? Yes, the government would also be having in handy tax revenue. How? By both indirect and direct sources. How through direct sources? Now when the standard of living has improved, the citizens are enjoying what? Higher levels of income. Higher levels of income means what for the government? More direct sources of income tax, right? And what about indirect tax? Yes, indirect tax would also increase. Why? When the incomes are rising, people would be spending their incomes. They will be spending on incomes and goods and services. As a result, the government would also be earning sizable indirect tax. This means the revenue sources for the government by ways of direct and indirect taxes would rise. However, there's also a plus point that there would be social evils of the society would also be eradicated. Why? Because the crime rates would fall. the level of crimes and the theft and the robbery would reduce. Why? Because the standard of living will improve. People are earning sizable income. They're not unemployed. They're better off. What about the drawbacks? You think there could be drawbacks even if there's full employment in the country? Yes, there could be. How? When there would be a trade-off with inflation. What does this mean? This means that, yes, we know that the country is having full employment. However, there is a drawback. Now, what could be the trade-off? It could be cost plus inflation could be there. What could be cost plus inflation could be there? That, yes, now the people are earning sizable wages. Yes, what would happen since the labor would be in shortage? So they would be pressing in for higher wages, and as a result, the producers would there would be a surge in their cost of production, right? They would have to pay more wages to attract labor, right? The labor would be pressing in for higher wages. There could also be demand pull inflation. Now, how could it be? Now, when you are talking about cost plus inflation, you can also draw this diagram. You can show that initially AS was the aggregate supply curve and AD was the aggregate demand curve. Now, when the wages have increased, the cost of production has increased, so the aggregate supply curve has shifted inwards towards the left, right? It has shifted inwards towards the left. It can be seen when it has moved inwards from AS to AS1. Similarly, there would also be demand pull inflation. Now, why would it be demand pull inflation? Why? Because when people would be earning higher incomes, so aggregate demand will rise and too much money would be chasing too few goods, right? So what would happen? The aggregate demand would rise. So you can show even by way of this diagram, and this will enable you to earn more marks. You can show a shift in the aggregate demand curve to the right, and the price level has risen. And what would happen when there would be shortage of labor? So this means the production cannot be increased at the moment. And when there is a rise in the aggregate demand, there's a shortage of goods and services at the moment. So the government, in order to fulfill the increase in demand, maybe have to rely on imported goods and services, right? So it might have to import those goods. So as a result, what would happen? That there would be a worsening of the balance of payment. The imports might exceed the exports, and there could be a worsening of the balance of payment. The current account might be negative. There could also mean that, yes, though we are having full employment, this could also mean that we are utilizing our resources at a level, at the rate at which we could not recoup those resources back, right? We could be depleting our natural resources. So these are all the points you could utilize. And then you could give a conclusive statement, justifying your reasoning. Now, I've explained you all the points. Now, let me put it in words and tell you how you can write it as a full length. I'll go in slowly and you look at the points. I'll keep on scrolling them and you decipher how I have put it across words, so that once you are constructing your answers, you will put it in a paragraph form for your examiner, right? So how will you begin? Yes, you'll begin by explaining full employment. Now listen carefully. Full employment level refers to when resources are being fully utilized. The country is at a point on the PPC where it is operating at full capacity. This would mean that there is efficient utilization of resources in the economy. Since there would be no wastage, maximum output with the given resources and technology would be produced. People are going to be employed. There would be minimum level of unemployment, and the country would be producing at its potential. People are going to be better off. This means that they would be enjoying higher standard of living. Higher incomes would mean the poverty level will reduce. Right? So far you've mentioned nearly 4 points, right? Again, you can mention one or more point, that would be sure enough. Now, these are all the points I've listed. You can go up to mentioning up to any 5 of these points, right? Now, when people are going to be employed, they would be earning. This means that the government would be having higher tax revenue, both by way of income tax and indirect taxes on goods and services. since the purchasing power of consumers have improved, hence the spending of goods and services will increase. So this means that the government would also be earning sizable revenue by way of indirect taxes. This also implies that government spending on unemployment benefits would fall, and these scarce resources could then be spent on the provision of education, healthcare, or infrastructure facilities. When workforce is employed, it also means a fall in the crime rates, leading towards lesser social evils and a reduction in the percentage of theft in an economy. Now we'll mention the why it might not be beneficial, right? So we'll mention the flip side. However, now you construct the other paragraph and you'll say, however, it is possible that the country might not benefit from full employment. Now notice how I utilize all these points. Listen carefully. However, it is possible that the country might not benefit from full employment. It could be possible that since incomes are rising, consumers tend to spend more on goods and services. As a result, aggregate demand will rise. It might lead to demand pull inflation, which means too much money chasing too few goods. Cost push inflation might also occur. Since there would be a labor shortage, workers could press for higher wages. Labor shortages would mean that there would be a supply constraint. Hence, the government would have to rely on imports. This means that the balance of payment might go into deficit when imports exceeds exports. So far, we've mentioned 4 points. So far, you've mentioned a well-balanced argument. Full employment of resources also means that there might be increase in the level of pollution, or there could be depletion of natural resources such as minerals or fossil fuels. Now, you've mentioned both the sides, sufficient balanced argument. You have drawn even these diagrams, demand pull inflation or the cost pull inflation. You've drawn the PPC curve as well, right? Now comes the final conclusion. You could say, thus full employment is beneficial to the extent that it does not bring the trade-off with the macroeconomic aims of the government. Either you could say this, or you could say full employment is desirable to the extent that its benefits outweigh the drawbacks. Or you could say it does not negatively impact the economy in the form of high inflation rate or worsening of the BOP position. So you could say full employment is desirable to the extent that it does not impact the economy in the form of higher inflation or worsening of the BOP situation. All right. So I've shown by way of this question how carefully yet smartly you're going to answer your discussed questions, convincing the examiner to give you a level 3 grade, right? I hope this is clear and you've enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel. Stay tuned. Pour in your suggestions. I would love feedback from your side. Take care. Happy learning.